Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. We are coming to you live, 15-20 minutes after the full-time whistle in Bergamo, where Arsenal have drawn 0-0 with Atalanta. It was a dull affair, and that's putting it kindly, but we're going to find some stuff to talk about. We have to, otherwise there'll be no podcast. I'm interested to get you guys' thoughts as well from the live chat throughout this episode. I want to hear from you. What did you make of the performance? What's wrong with Arsenal's attack at the moment? Surely it's not just Martin Odegaard being absent. Is it deeper than that? What is it? We're going to get into that on our Patreon pod, which is coming up and will be available to you all first thing tomorrow morning. But we're going to focus on how the game went. We're going to discuss the talking points. David Raya's heroics once again in the UEFA Champions League. We're going to do all of that on this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Don't go anywhere. Hey people, hope you're all good. Hope you're all well. Hope you enjoyed that tonight more than I did, because my God, I found it dull. I found it really, really dull. Like, when I watch an Arsenal game, I'm normally gripped. I normally am sat there in the zone. Nothing in the world could distract me. I'm focused on patterns of play and shapes and movements and all the things that I talk about tactically on a regular basis. I want to see them, and I want to try and spot new things and different things. I really do get so engrossed when the Arsenal are playing. But tonight, I got to be honest, I found myself getting distracted. I found myself tempted to scroll through X and see what other people were saying. I found myself basically not enjoying what was a really dull and boring game of football. What I do want to say, though, right at the top of the pod, and to kind of get it out there and make sure that this is the pretext for everything that I'm going to say, is that I actually think that was a decent result. Going away to Atalanta, Europa League winners, I talked about how difficult I thought that was going to be in the preview show. What I also did in the preview show, and I remember some of you in the chat laughed at me, was I predicted a 0-0 draw. Because I genuinely thought that what we saw tonight was a real possibility. I heard Adam Summerton in the commentary saying, I expected goals tonight, and that's fair, but I didn't. And my prediction tells you I didn't, because I made that prediction on Tuesday. Was it Tuesday or was it Wednesday? I can't remember. Anyway, I made the prediction. No, I think it was yesterday, Wednesday. I made the prediction 24 hours out from the game. I stuck with it. I even put a cheeky £20 on it. And look, I've reaped the rewards in the end. But look, at the end of the day, as I say, you go away from home in the UEFA Champions League, you don't want to lose first and foremost. And I think maybe there was a bit of concern or sort of maybe this, it sounds like I'm questioning the players' professionalism. I'm not doing that. But maybe Sunday's game, even subconsciously, is playing on their minds. And if it is, that would be perfectly natural. I think the new league format in the Champions League obviously means that there isn't that desperate need to go out and win a game. I would argue that there was never a desperate need to win your first group game either, particularly given the way the groups are seeded, and you'd have known that Arsenal would have been, if not the strongest, then the second strongest team in the group. And so if they went away to a side that were also fancied to progress and they got a draw, that would be seen as a decent result. So, yeah, it's a good result. I think if you're looking for an encouraging sign, and I'm not going to say that the atmosphere in Bergamo was as hostile as the one we experienced when we went to Lens last season, but that was an example of Arsenal going away early in the Champions League campaign, not really used to those surroundings, and basically crumbling because of, the environment that we were playing in. And I remember coming away from that game and saying exactly that. It felt like we crumbled under the atmosphere. It felt like we just had a bit of maybe imposter syndrome, where we turned up, thought, shit, this is really difficult. And all of a sudden those questions start going through your mind, don't they, as a player? Do I deserve to be here? Do I have the right to be here? And we had some really experienced players in the team that day, and, you know, I'm sure they would have been fine with that side of things. But there would have been players for sure who were experiencing the UEFA Champions League and an atmosphere like the one at Lens for the very first time in their careers. So I kind of understood that. And I guess where I'm going with this is, if you're looking for a positive, the positive is that we went to Bergamo, which is a tough place to go, to the home of Atalanta, and we never played well or clicked in terms of our offensive play, but we also never looked out of our depth or as if we'd completely lost control of the game. So that's kind of the positive spin on it, I would say. I'm going to just pull up the notes that I was making throughout the game on my phone. I will say a big hello to everybody that's joining me in the live chat tonight. It is late on this Thursday night. A big thank you to all of you, and a big welcome to everybody who will be listening to this on Friday morning. Hope you're all good and hope you enjoyed the game more than I did, as I said right at the top. But just a few notes on the game from me, a few observations. We've got a Patreon pod that will be available tomorrow morning as well. I was going to make it available tonight, but the subject that I've decided to base it around, which is our attack and why maybe it's misfiring a little bit at the moment, what's wrong with it, aside from the obvious Martin Odegaard is missing. But I would quite like to go away and have a look at some of the statistics, because what I tend to do when I put pods together, particularly the kind of analysis pieces, is I come up with an idea. I think what I saw was the problem, and then I'll look at it and I'll try and make my mind up that way. But I do quite like to go and find statistics that back up or support my thoughts, or in some cases don't. And then maybe my opinion and my view is slightly adjusted as a result of that. So I would quite like to research that a little bit before I drop that episode. But you will get an episode of In Focus over on the Patreon side of things tomorrow morning. So if you fancy signing up, if you fancy being a part of that, getting access to that, visit patreon.com/The Chronicles of a Gooner. The link is in the description, and you can support me in my endeavours too. But game started nice and calmly. I thought Arsenal started the game quite well, actually. I thought we showed a control, and I thought we showed that we weren't going to be overawed very, very early on. What I was interested in seeing tonight, particularly when the lineup came out, because obviously Mikel Arteta made 2 changes from the weekend. He brought Declan Rice into the side, who was available after his suspension, and he brought Gabriel Jesus in up front, and he took Leandro Trossard out of the team. And yeah, I was looking at the names on the sort of page, and I was thinking, okay, this can either be played in one of 2 ways. So was Mikel Arteta going to put Declan Rice kind of alongside Thomas Partey in the midfield and create a kind of double midfield pivot, if you like we saw at Spurs? Or is he going to trust in Partey and Rice's mobility more than he did when Jorginho was in the picture and say, no, let's revert back to what we normally do? And what we normally do is we play with the number 6, the lone number 6, and then we play with the 2 8s and we push them right up. And Jurrien Timber comes inside as well. I actually said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I said this post the Tottenham game, that I liked Jurrien Timber playing in a more conventional fullback role, that I felt it suited him better, that I felt he looked more comfortable in his own skin, knowing that he was going to play a conventional fullback role, something that he would have played many, many times in the past, even if it isn't his primary position. And yeah, I just thought that worked a hell of a lot better. But it was very evident early on in this game tonight that we'd reverted back to our usual way, which, as I say, is the lone 6, the 2 8s, and then you require the left back to go in field in our system. And Jurrien Timber was tasked with doing that. And as a result, I don't think he had as good a game. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I do think there were points in the first half where the distances between Rice and Partey were too big. And I think Mikel Arteta was making that point to the two players as well. He was desperately trying to get them to be that little bit more compact. You saw Jesus and Havertz swapping positions, which was to be expected. We talked about that maybe looking more like a front two at times rather than Havertz joining part of the midfield, which again brings me back to my point around whether or not we were going to stick to the kind of 4-4-2 thing we saw against Tottenham, or if we were going to revert back to type. And for the most part, we reverted back to type. We failed to create anything really of note. Bukayo Saka's free kick in the first half worked the goalkeeper down to his right. Good effort from him. And then there was a chance for Gabriel Martinelli late on in the game. I haven't seen it back since the initial replay that we got when we were watching the game tonight. But I suspect that Gabriel Martinelli might have just gone a little bit early with that run, and he might have been, had the VAR stepped in, just ever so slightly offside anyway. But he still needs to do better with the opportunity. He still needs to finish it. And it does feel like he's snatching at things right now, Gabriel Martinelli. Every opportunity that seems to come his way is spurned, is wasted at this moment in time. It feels like he's maybe overthinking it. It feels like he's so desperate to make his mark that what he's doing is just snatching at every opportunity, and all composure, all thought, and all the coolness that you need in front of goal has just completely evaded him. And we know it's in there somewhere because we've seen it in the past. Now, I'm not going to say that Gabriel Martinelli was ever this killer in front of goal and someone that you would look at and say he's definitely going to get you 20 goals a season. But my impression of Martinelli as a finisher has changed over the last season and a half because he looks significantly worse. And look, I've said it before, I think Martinelli goes through ups and downs. And I think if you look at his Arsenal career throughout and you go right back to the beginning of it and you follow it up until now, there were peaks and there were dips. And this feels like another one of those dips. So look, I'm desperate to see it come good for Gabriel Martinelli because I think his work rate, his attitude, all of that stuff is spot on. I've obviously got an affection for him because he joined the club so young, and I was really, really excited by him when we got our first few looks at him. I always said, and you know, this is a big compliment for me to give out, but I always said at the time, and I remember when he came into the side and scored a few Europa League goals, I remember saying, I've not been this excited about a youngster at Arsenal since Cesc Fabregas. And that is high praise indeed. And it looked like the season before last that he'd got to that point where he was going to be a real influence and a real talisman for this side. And it just seems to have faded a little bit. And I don't know if it's because he feels pressure because he knows that maybe Trossard's there to take his position. Raheem Sterling coming in doesn't really do him any favours either. I wonder if that's playing on his mind. But if it is, then he needs to get over that, because playing at a top club, which is what every player aspires to do, playing at the highest level, which again is what every player aspires to do, requires you to be able to handle those types of pressures. So I don't know for sure that that is the issue with Gabriel Martinelli, but from where I'm standing, that's what it looks like at this moment in time. We saw Arsenal try and go long at times in this game. We saw them try to exploit the spaces in behind Atalanta when they could. And Declan Rice gave a post-match interview that I thought was quite interesting because he talked about the centre-halves following you and following you out of the defence, which creates holes in behind. And if you can drop the ball into them and get your runners going, it looks, it's something that you can potentially benefit from. So that kind of made a lot of sense in terms of what we were seeing in the game and how it was unfolding. And look, if I'm honest, we got to half time and there was just nothing really to talk about. My wife had been putting my kids to bed, and when she came in the room with about 15 minutes to go of this first half, she goes, "You look a little bit disinterested." And I just said, "It's just a terrible game of football. Like, I don't really know what else to say." She was like, "What's happened?" And I was like, "Nothing. That's kind of the point. It's half time and there's just nothing to discuss, nothing to talk about. Nothing of any note has happened." And I thought, surely we're not going to get a second half like that. Surely we're not going to get another stinker over 45 minutes of football. And I text my brothers at half-time saying, bloody hell, we're boring tonight, aren't we? I think I then followed that up with the famous catchphrase of boring, boring Arsenal. And it was one of my friends, actually, that sent me a text back when I sent him a very similar message. And he raised the subject of Kai Havertz. Now, Kai Havertz did okay tonight, I think. And Kai Havertz does okay every time he plays now. He's a really, really important player to this Arsenal side. But I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on this. So get involved in the live chat. Because the question that my friend put to me was, does Kai Havertz foul too much? Now, you might be listening and thinking, bloody hell, this game must have been terrible, because Harry is talking about whether or not Kai Havertz fouls too much in the immediate post-match podcast. But I think this is a really good point, because he does give away a hell of a lot of free kicks. Okay, not in dangerous areas, and a lot of the time it's because he's challenging for the ball. Sometimes he makes fouls to delay restarts. Sometimes he can be quite cynical, Kai Havertz, as well. But it got me thinking about why it is that every time he's involved in a duel, the referee tends to give it the other way. And then I watched back, because I saw a clip of it flying around at half-time on social media, of that coming together with Kolasinac, who, by the way, can fight off a couple of robbers around the outside of his car, but can't stay on his feet when Kai Havertz brushes the side of his face. Anyway, that's a debate for another day. But it got me thinking, is it because he's so tall and gangly? Is that what it is? Does he look clumsy? So then referees just assume that whenever there's a coming together, it's because he was off balance, that there's been a collision and two players have hit the ground. Like, is that what it is? Like, because he does give away a hell of a lot of free kicks. And as I say, he can be very cynical and he can be a real gamesman, Kai Havertz. But there's got to be a reason why referees are so desperate to blow their whistles every single time Kai Havertz challenges someone in an aerial duel or looks to hold someone off or whatever. So that got me thinking. I'm interested to get you guys' thoughts on that as well. So start throwing them into the chat. So we're at half-time at this point, and you're thinking it can't possibly be that bad in the second half. Hopefully it's going to be better. Hopefully it's going to be more entertaining. And very early on in that second period, Arsenal concede a penalty. Thomas Partey, the man who conceded it, I tweeted at halftime saying that Thomas Partey's pass accuracy rate in that first half was only 77%. You might hear that and think 77%, that's pretty good. It's not when you play at the base of a midfield, in my opinion. You've got to be far more responsible with the ball. Some of those misplaced passes were further up the pitch. I can remember a couple of them. I can remember the one where he played it to the left-hand side and kind of Timber had made the run and Gabriel had left it and Martinelli was there and sort of he'd played the pass behind him. So, look, the passing accuracy from Thomas Partey in that first period was really poor. But my worry has been all season about Thomas Partey that he just doesn't look physically at it. And I know I sound like a broken record because I say it pretty much every time we talk Arsenal. But it really, really is a thing. And if he's not at his brilliant best in possession, which he certainly wasn't tonight, then what's the justification for having him in the team anymore? Because if he's not physical and his technical level's dropped, what is he giving us? And the answer is not very much. And I think that was exposed tonight in comparison to what you saw against Spurs, because as I mentioned right at the top of the pod, Mikel Arteta didn't stick to the kind of 4-4-2 thing tonight. He went back to playing with the lone six, in this case Thomas Partey, and then playing with the 2-8s. And Partey suffered for that, which says to me that actually, going forward, he can't be trusted as a lone six anymore. Now, for what it's worth, I think Mikel Arteta will go the other way. I think he'll revert back to a more pragmatic and defensive style when we go to the Etihad on Sunday, because he knows them inside out. He understands what Pep Guardiola's side is all about, and he'll be very, very respectful of what they're capable of. But I'm starting to ask the question now around whether or not Thomas Partey can ever be the lone six anymore. Because based on the evidence that we've seen at the start of this season, the answer feels like a no. He's obviously getting support from the fullback who's coming inside, Jurriën Timber, but I don't think, as I've said already, he looks totally comfortable doing that. And so, are we going to have to look for a different option at the base? And is that Declan Rice in the long term, maybe, when Mikel Merino returns to fitness? I don't know. Lots of questions about this. Lots of questions about Thomas Partey. What have we got here? Trevor says, could the Partey be over, Harry? Look, I said in the summer, and so I don't want to be a hypocrite, but I said in the summer that if we could get good money for Thomas Partey and that was going to enable us to go out and replace him, then great, let's do it. But I also said that given his contract situation, given his injury history, and everything else surrounding and sort of involving Thomas Partey, I thought it very difficult to go out and get a reasonable fee. And so then we were hearing of sort of, in my opinion, joke bids like 5 million and 10 million. And I thought to myself, well, if you're only going to get 5 or 10 million because the Saudis aren't biting or Thomas Partey doesn't want to go there, whatever the case might be, if you're only going to get 5 or 10 million, then how are you supposed to replace him with that? Maybe you should just manage him a little bit more effectively, reduce his workload, and say, no, let him stay and let him leave on a free at the end of the season. But at the start of this season, I've just been so unimpressed with him that I'm starting to wonder if we were silly not to take the 5 or 10 million. And I know that sounds knee-jerk, but those of you that listen to this regularly will know that I've been concerned about Thomas Partey. And it goes back all the way to the end of last season where his level dropped, in my opinion. It then carried over into pre-season where, again, he didn't look fit. And at the start of this campaign, I'm still not sure about him. So it could be the end of the Partey very soon. But anyway, the reason we're talking Partey is because he's the one that conceded the penalty. And he's just got no awareness, has he, whatsoever, of where the attacker is. He does look like he's going to give him a little pull. And then he kind of, bottles that a little bit in the sense of he doesn't really follow it through. But then there's a clip with Partey's left leg, I think, that catches the back of Ederson's calf, which is what takes him down and is what ultimately I think the penalty kick has been given for. Now, when I saw the replay back, and I think I posted on X at the time, that was exactly my thoughts. The pulling thing seems to start outside of the box, and even if it was inside the box, I'm not sure that there was enough in that for anyone to give a penalty. But there was certainly enough in that clip from behind, which ultimately tripped Ederson, and so I don't really have any complaints about that decision. They took an absolute age to check it on the VAR. Clement Turpin, a.k.a. Leandro Trossard's twin brother, was standing there waiting for the instruction. He got the instruction to continue and for the penalty to be taken. And then David Raya does David Raya things, springs to life and produces one of, if not the best double saves from a penalty situation that I've ever seen. Now, people will say Retegui should have hit the rest of the target. He had most of the goal to aim at. How on earth has he missed it? And it's a bit like the Watkins one at Villa just a few weeks ago where, yeah, okay, the striker should score. And the striker should put it somewhere where you're not getting to it. But that shouldn't take away from what a wonderful piece of goalkeeping that is from David Raya. And again, I refer back to the Declan Rice interview that he gave to TNT Sports after the game, and the question was put to him, has Aaron Ramsdale leaving helped David Raya? Like, I guess the angle that the pundits are coming at it from is, has it kind of lifted a weight on his shoulder? And we talked about this not that long ago, maybe a few days ago, maybe a few weeks ago, maybe the last time David Raya produced some heroics. We said that maybe that has helped because now he knows unequivocally that he's the number one. And I touched on imposter syndrome a little bit earlier on when I was talking about Arsenal's first experience of an away Champions League tie under Mikel Arteta. But perhaps that's something that David Raya was suffering from as well. Because all the noise was, get Ramsdale back in, get Ramsdale in. Why isn't Ramsdale playing? And nobody ever really was willing to give David Raya the chance. And over time, he earned the right to be the number one. He earned the right to keep that shirt. And going into the new season, I think he's been in outstanding form. And that decision by Mikel Arteta to replace Aaron Ramsdale with David Raya, as far as I'm concerned, right now, has been totally vindicated. The really interesting thing about this as well was that Inaki Kanya, obviously Arsenal's goalkeeping coach, played a big role in getting David Raya to the club, but he played a big role tonight in giving David Raya the information that he needed to save Retegi's penalty. Now, I don't know if he told him dive to your bottom right-hand corner or whatever, but there was obviously a lengthy conversation going on between them, which suggests that obviously lots of homework's been done, lots of research has been done. It does really feel like now we take care of the details, which is great. And David Raya makes the initial save, which I think is quite a comfortable save. It's not a great penalty from Retegi, but he's got the desire, the want to see the situation through. And as the rebound goes straight into Retegi's path, Raya is up like a shot and he just throws himself back across the goal. And again, the striker should have scored. Let's be clear on that. But that shouldn't take anything away from David Raya and his heroics on the night. It was a fantastic double save, and it's one that will be talked about for a long, long time. And I remember sort of talking to someone not that long ago about David Raya, and I think they asked me, when did I think was his kind of moment where he really became an Arsenal goalkeeper? And the moment I always go back to was his heroics in that penalty shootout against Porto in the round of 16 last season. So the Champions League feels like a competition that David Raya is thriving in. He's a little bit later on in his career than a lot of goalkeepers are when they make a move to a so-called big club. And, you heard Declan Rice. He's living right off the pitch. He's doing everything he can, I think, to make the most of it. He's had a hard career, David Raya, but he's right at the pinnacle now, and it feels like he's grabbing that opportunity with both hands, which is, of course, excellent to see and very, very beneficial to us as a team. Guys, if you've got questions, hold on to them in the live chat box, because I'm going to ask you to drop them in a little bit later on. I'm just going to quickly bring you guys up to speed with a couple of bits and pieces. If you're just joining us on the live stream, the Patreon pod will be available first thing tomorrow morning. I've got some stats that I want to go and look up before I do it. The subject of the Patreon pod will be what's wrong with Arsenal's attack. And I'm not just going to sit there and say Martin Odegaard, because I think the issues that we're having at the minute are a little bit deeper than just the Norwegian. Not that I want to cause or stir panic among the fan base, but there's been a few kind of toothless displays in that attacking third for Arsenal so far this season. And whilst it's not a major concern or panic at this stage, it's certainly something that I think is worth discussing. So that'll be the subject of our Patreon pod. If you want to sign up on Patreon, visit patreon.com/The Chronicles of a Gooner. Gives me an opportunity too, while we're on the subject of fantastic offers, to tell you guys a little bit about NordVPN, the best VPN service out there. I can vouch for it. I use it on a pretty much daily basis, and it's been a game changer for me. It allows me to surf the web via different locations. With the click of a button, I can change my location, which allows me to access videos, live streams, movies, TV series, you name it. Things that aren't normally available in our territory, in our location. And obviously when I travel abroad, I've got the luxury of being able to flick back to the UK, watch Sky, watch BT, or TNT as it's now known, watch BBC iPlayer so that I can watch Match of the Day, etc., etc. So it's really, really great. And I highly recommend it. You also get incredible protection when surfing online as well, which is another major benefit. And if you sign up via our code, you can visit nordvpn.com/chroniclesafc. The link is below. You will get a mega discount plus 4 months for free at the end of your program. That's www.nordvpn.com/chroniclesafc to sign up. Okay. So David Raya makes the save, and at that point, I was completely confident that it was going to be 0-0 in the end. Raheem Sterling came on, and he created a really good chance for Gabriel Martinelli, which we've touched on already. He really ought to have taken that chance. And Ricardo Calafiori came on, I thought was pretty good as well. Leandro Trossard came on and interestingly got involved in the game in a lot of positions that you don't normally associate with him. in those deeper areas. Looked pretty good for the most part. Gave the ball away a couple of times. But I've never, ever felt that Leandro Trossard was necessarily the best in that department. So I wasn't particularly surprised by that. But we're going to talk about the attack at length on the Patreon pod. But just initial thoughts. Is it movement? Is it a lack of movement, I should say? Is it a lack of quality? I don't think it's a lack of quality. Gabriel Jesus doesn't look at it, guys. Like, I know he's been out for a while, but he just doesn't look like the same Gabriel Jesus that joined Arsenal, all that time ago and really kind of lifted our level and raised our level as a team. He's just not the same at the minute. And that is having a big impact, I think. Well, it certainly had a big impact today. I can't talk about historical games, but games that he wasn't involved in. But today it was a problem for us. And then you think about what we're trying to do to accommodate the absence of Martin Odegaard. And it's not like for like, which is influencing how much we play down the right-hand side, which means that Bukayo Saka's less involved and Ben White's less involved. And yeah, as I say, I've got some ideas in my head about why this is, and I'm going to check into the stats from the game, and I'm going to really drill down on a couple of points so that we can make this Patreon episode first thing tomorrow morning. But there's just a lack of creative spark in and among this group at the moment. And I think that comes with a couple of things. I think when you don't have a good enough focal point at centre forward, which Kai Havertz is, I'm not convinced Gabriel Jesus is anymore, that makes a big difference. When you have players like Martin Odegaard, who are normally so good at operating in those half spaces, and in turn attracting attention and creating room either in the wider lane or further in field like Martin Odegaard can do, you're going to miss that too. And it means that teams aren't having to worry about that area of the pitch necessarily, and so it's easier to shut someone like Bukayo Saka or Gabriel Martinelli for that matter out of the game. So yeah, it's quite the conundrum. And as I say, we're going to go into that in a lot more detail. If you've got any questions, guys, let me have them in the live chat. I'll take a few before I sign out. I am absolutely shattered, by the way. It's been a long old day. Also, just while you're getting your questions in, is anyone here a Virgin Media user here in the UK? Because for some reason, on my Virgin Media box, which is a brand spanking new one, by the way, I got it like 3 months ago. When I watch TNT Sports 1, the picture breaks up and is really bad. And I get the same when I watch BBC One, but I don't get it on any other channels. Because someone said to me, it's probably a loose connection somewhere. Go around and tighten all the connections and the wires around your house. And I did that. But then I thought, if it was that, wouldn't you get a break-up in signal on every channel? Why is it just those specifically? I did Google it, and a few people have been moaning about it on some of the forums. So it isn't just me with that problem. But it really wound me up, because the first 10 minutes of the game, I would say, were bloody unbearable in terms of how bad it was. Ollie says, and I've seen this comment before from Ollie. Ollie, thank you for your support, mate, but you don't want to be doing this. He says, I've quit my job and broken up with my girlfriend so I can dedicate every second of my life to watching you. Keep up the great content. Thank you, Ollie. But don't dump your girlfriend. Don't quit your job. It's not worth it. Hacker says, was it a buffering issue or was it slow Nord? It's nothing to do with Nord. I wasn't using NordVPN. I pay over £150 a month to have the sports channels, to have Sky and BT and all of that. It costs me a fortune. And so when it doesn't work, it gets under my skin. If you are one of those people, and of course I don't own one of these things, but if you are one of those people that has a Fire Stick and you pay 50 quid a year and it stutters or jumps sometimes, you kind of just go, well, it is what it is. You get what you pay for. Do you know what I mean? And so you can accept it. But when you're talking about a service that you are paying north of £150 a month for, it's annoying. And that's why I'm so rattled by it. Anyway, guys, get your questions in. I've got a couple coming through. I'll touch on those in a minute. If I could just ask you one last time, if you haven't done so already, please leave a like on the video. There's loads of you with us, and there's nowhere near enough likes on the board. Help me out there. It really, really does help. Let's take some of these questions. I'm just scrolling back through the chat because there's been some really interesting ones. Afsar says, do you think this summer's poor transfer window will come back to bite us? We lack pace. We look so slow. I don't know that it was a poor transfer window, and I'm always reluctant to judge a transfer window until quite a bit further down the line, because players that you think are not particularly inspiring might be, once they click into gear, people look at it and I think they see that we signed Calafiori, a defender, and he's obviously made his way into the squad and is coming off the bench at the moment. And you look at Raheem Sterling, who probably wasn't brought in as a starter necessarily, and you're going, well, that's a bit underwhelming. And I think what people are forgetting is that we signed up David Raya on a permanent deal, and look at what he's producing right now. That's a bloody good signing. We've got Jurriën Timber back, who isn't quite a new signing, but feels like one because he missed the entirety of last season. But the main headline signing, it depends on your viewpoint, right? Because Calafiori could go down as that. But I would argue that the headline signing that we made after Spain went and won the Euros was Mikel Merino, and we haven't seen him yet. And that's down to rotten luck, nothing else. Bit of misfortune, and we're without him for the time being. So I think you'll look at the window a little bit differently. But I also remember people saying the exact same things at this stage last season, where we were picking up results, but we weren't playing particularly well. And I remember everybody saying, what a rubbish window. We bought Timber, he's injured. We bought Havertz, he's rubbish. We've got Declan Rice, great. Declan Rice is the only one that's, improved the team or helped us in any way, shape or form. I remember all of those same conversations that we're having now taking place a year ago. And over the course of the season, we improved and we improved and we improved, and we got to a place where we were a consistent machine, and I believe we're desperately unlucky not to be crowned Premier League champions. Factor in that we had an international tournament this summer as well, and the disruption that causes, and you can understand why it's been a bit of a slow start. I do think that we are lacking something in the attack, and I would hope that Raheem Sterling is going to be that, and that he'll be able to come in and out of the side and help us maintain a much higher base level when we do seek to rotate a little bit. But I don't know that he's going to be that, and I can't say that he definitely is that because I've seen very little of him in an Arsenal shirt so far. But he did look sharper tonight, which is good. I am worried about Gabriel Jesus because he just looks miles and miles and miles off it, which isn't a good sign. I do worry that in dropping Kai Havertz that bit deeper, we've taken him away from the position in which he flourishes the most, and that might impact our overall level. Gabriel Martinelli isn't delivering, but then when Leandro Trossard starts games, I'm never particularly impressed by him either. So I think that if later down the line people are saying we didn't strengthen the attack enough and instead we brought in someone who was, and I'll quote what some of the kids were saying, washed from Chelsea like Raheem Sterling. It's not my opinion, by the way, but I know that is an opinion that exists. Then you'll look back at it and you'll say, well, maybe we didn't strengthen the attack in the way that we should have. And I think you'd be within your rights to do that. I think we've been unlucky with the midfield situation. I would have liked us to have got another body anyway, but I was saying that throughout the summer. It didn't happen. We've now lost a couple and we look a bit thin. The defence is fine for me. So, yeah, I guess we're going to see how it pans out, aren't we? And there's no point in crying over spilt milk, things that have already happened. The Saskia Guna says, would you go back with Partey at City or would you play Jorginho? Oh, the fact that he took Partey off when he did suggests to me that he's planning to start Partey at the weekend. And I think overall that's probably still the right decision. But he looked well off it tonight, like well off it. And Thomas Partey, as I said earlier on, without the physical power and with his technical level seemingly waning, is not this irreplaceable piece in your machine of a team and someone that I would lose any sleep over if he was unavailable or to move on, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I'm a bit concerned about that area of the pitch at the moment, but I'm also concerned about the attack. The only area I'm not concerned about is the defence, and I know the defenders always get all the praise and all the plaudits, and we're getting called boring Arsenal and all that, but we defend as a team incredibly well. And so even if you're not getting that bit of spark from your forward players, you are getting a committed performance. You are getting a high work rate. And I guess if you're Mikel Arteta, those are the fogging standards, guys, right? Those are the bare minimum things that you expect, and he's getting those. So it's not because of a lack of effort. Maybe we need to adjust something tactically. There's too many players whose individual form is not quite where it normally is, all at the same time, which certainly doesn't help. Let's see what else. I'm going to take a couple more. Luke Mahoney says, what are your initial feelings towards Sunday off the back of tonight's performance? They haven't really changed, to be honest with you. I felt like we got to a point tonight where we kind of settled for the draw. I think Atalanta probably settled for it as well. And the game just fizzled out. And I thought this could happen. It's why I predicted 0-0 in the preview show. Munn says, Jesus is not a 9 for us. He should be the next one out of Arsenal. I mean, tonight was kind of a turning point in my view of Gabriel Jesus. I got to be honest with you. But a number 9 playing for Arsenal with all the right people around him will probably be way more effective than a number 9 that's playing in an Arsenal side without Martin Odegaard. So I do want to factor that into the argument as well. But look, I'm not giving up on him just yet. But going into the season, I was really positive about Jesus. And I thought, this is the year where he returns to the form that he showed in the first season when he joined Arsenal. And to have him and then a Kai Havertz who's completely resurgent, who's turned his career completely around, I thought that would be good enough. Every time I've seen Jesus this season, I've not been impressed. And I know that the opportunities to see him this season have been limited. But tonight I was looking to him with the captain's armband to lead the line effectively, to impact the game, and to show everybody, to remind everybody what he is capable of. And he didn't come. And again, maybe because he's been out for a while, I need to cut him some slack. But when he got hooked on, 57, 58 minutes, you looked at it and you went, yeah, good. And when you say that about a player that we all have so much adoration for, it kind of cuts deep. It's one of those things that comes out and then you say, shit, did I say that? Yeah, I did say that. And actually for good reason, because he turned in a stinker of a performance. But I'm not going to say that we need to move him out just yet or that we should be looking to kick him to the curb. I still think he's got a part to play this season. But I'd be lying, as I said already, if I didn't say that my opinion has just started to maybe turn a little bit. Not on Gabriel Jesus' quality, but on whether he's ever going to be that sharp, twisting, dribbling, full of guile attacker that he was just a couple of seasons ago. So that's my kind of worry and concern. Just a quick reminder, guys, leave a like on the video because I'm going to be signing out in a minute. So if you wouldn't mind leaving a like, that would be greatly appreciated. Remember, subscribe to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. We really, really appreciate you. I'm sorry it wasn't the longest post-match pod, but there wasn't a great deal to talk about apart from David Raya's amazing, amazing, amazing save. It really was amazing. How many times can I say amazing in a minute? But yeah, Patreon pod to come tomorrow morning. I just want to have a look through some statistics before I record that. What's wrong with Arsenal's attack? You tell me in the comments section below on this one. I'd love to read what you guys have to say. It can't just be a case of no Odegaard, no Partey, or no Partey. Maybe it should be no Partey after his performance tonight. But anyway, that's another story for another day. Check out nordvpn.com/Chronicles AFC. Make sure that you get yourself that special... Wait, am I talking about Patreon or am I talking about NordVPN? I can't remember which one I was talking about then. I've completely lost the plot. It's late. I'm tired. NordVPN.com/Chronicles AFC. Patreon.com/The Chronicles of a Gooner. Check them out. Claim your NordVPN discount because it might not be there in a couple of weeks' time when our current partnership is due to expire. So do check that out if it's something that you're interested in. And I will see you all tomorrow on the Patreon pod. And we're going to start building up towards that game against Manchester City, of course, on Sunday. Not sure when the preview is going to be out, either Friday evening or bright and early Saturday morning. But either way, I'll get it out to you and you can let me know your thoughts on what's going to be a massive game at the Etihad. I'll stop short of calling it a title decider because of the fact that we're in September, basically. But it's a big old game. I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great evening. Goodbye.